it was made clear to the United States that Iran wanted to talk. President Trump is willing to listen. As President Trump announced on Monday, the United States has been engaged over the last 3 days in productive conversations, which led the president to temporarily instruct the Department of War to postpone planned strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure only.
President Trump's press secretary on the prospects for negotiations about the Iran conflict. Joining us tonight is Her Excellency Lana Nusseibeh, Minister of State for the United Arab Emirates. Your Excellency, thanks for being here.
Brett, thank you for having me on the show.
So, first of all, let's just paint the picture as you see it from the UAE, how things are going, what it looks like from your end of the world.
Well, first of all, Brett, what happens in the Gulf clearly doesn't stay in the Gulf. So Iran's attack on Gulf allies of the United States and Jordan is an attack on the entire world and the world economy, including its closure of the Straits of Hormuz. Let's not forget that a fifth of the world's oil and gas goes through the Straits of Hormuz. 30% of its fertilizers for food production and harvest goes through the Straits of Hormuz. Almost every product known to every global supply chain coming from the Gulf goes through the Straits of Hormuz. So effectively, Iran is trying to give the global economy a heart attack. We should not allow Iran, a state sponsor of terrorism, to set the global price for food and gas.
I want to ask you what happened, what transpired. You know, just last month, February 9th, you met in Tehran with the Iranian foreign minister. Out of that, you said there were useful and constructive talks, the determination for bilateral relations between Iran and the UAE to expand. In this war, if you look at the chart, the red dots are the attacks on Gulf Arab states, and you, in this chart, at the UAE have seen exponentially more attacks than even Israel. Why is Israel being attacked, or UAE being attacked, more than Israel?
There are a lot of questions there. I think they're really important ones. But you're right, over 60% of the attacks, more than Israel and the Gulf countries combined, have been directed at the UAE. And that's a fundamental question, why? But going back to your first question, we've always tried the diplomatic channel with Iran. We've tried it for decades. And I was in Tehran in early February. We have been working with the United States for months to try and de-escalate tensions in the region. We were supportive of direct negotiations between the United States and Iran. We did not ask for a war in our region. We did not start a war in our region. But as a result of these operations, we have now seen Iran take the irresponsible decision, instead of negotiating with the United States over really well understood concerns over its nuclear program, over its ballistic missiles program, over its support of non-state terrorist actors in the region. Instead of negotiating over those issues, they chose instead to fire over 2,200 missiles and drones at the United Arab Emirates, a peacemaker in the region. A country that signed the Abraham Accords 5 years ago, a country that has tried to extend the hand of peace to Iran, a country that has tried to push for negotiations and dialogue. So that the question is why? And I think the answer is because we are an idea that threatens Iran, that threatens this regime, because we are open, we are progressive, we are tolerant, we're a vibrant economy. And what have they done for their people with the resources that they have? They sit across 3 continents just the same way we do. They have inflation, their currency is in free fall. They had a spate of killing protesters in January. This is a really ruthless regime, and President Trump is right to hold it to account today.
President Trump is now trying that diplomatic effort, or at least he's talking about that, saying that he is reaching out to the Iranians. They are reaching out, he claims, to them, and they're having discussions. The Wall Street Journal writes it this way: Gulf Arab states are growing alarmed by President Trump's eagerness to do a deal to end the war with Iran that leaves them with a hostile but potent rival, and are pushing to continue the fight. People familiar with their position said the leaders of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates are lobbying the president to stick with the war until Iran is sufficiently weakened that it won't pose a threat. Is that a fair statement?
We support President Trump's efforts to try and conclusively solve the issues I outlined a little bit earlier in our discussion. You can't have a stable region, either in our region or for the rest of the world, if Iran controls the Straits of Hormuz and sets the price of food and gas around the world, which they are currently doing today, 3.5 weeks in. You cannot have a stable region or world economy if Iran sponsors terrorist actors like Hezbollah, like Hamas around the region, groups in Iraq, etc. You cannot have a stable region or world if you have an Iran with a ballistic missile weapons program that today can reach as far as Europe, as we saw with the missile strike on Diego Garcia.
Your Excellency, do you see an end to this? Do you see a light at the end of this tunnel, for the war coming to an end?
The light at the end of the tunnel is in Iran's hands. They have to negotiate with the United States and the international community. The United States does not have to bear this burden alone. The NATO Secretary General came out with a very strong statement supporting President Trump's efforts with partners in Europe to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. World leaders, over 30, have signed a statement to that effect on Saturday, and more are joining this week, so that they are committing resources to keeping the Straits of Hormuz open. So this is not just a U.S. problem. This is a global problem, and that is the light at the end of the tunnel.
Do you think the calls for the Gulf Arab allies, including the UAE, to get involved kinetically in the war are fair?
The UAE has fought side by side with the United States in over 6 coalitions in our history. We have shared values, we have shared history with the United States, we have interoperability with the United States. They are a clear partner to us in regional security, and we intend to double down on that. Today, we are looking at a threat to not only our region, but to the international community at large that needs to be stopped in whatever way possible. The UAE is always for a diplomatic off-ramp at the end of that. We need to use diplomacy, but we need to use diplomacy when Iran understands that its behavior as a rogue actor is not acceptable neither to the region nor to the international community.
But we wouldn't be surprised if the UAE or Saudi Arabia got involved in the fight, actually.
We are already involved in a fight.
You're taking incoming, but as far as
we're not just taking incoming, we are assertively using all options on the table to defend our communities and our people, including 75,000 Americans who reside in the UAE.
Last thing quickly, the UAE and Saudi were at odds over Yemen and Sudan before this conflict started. Has this war changed that dynamic?
Let me take you back to the Houthis in 2015. 10 years ago, they were not the threat they were to the Red Sea. Today, they are threatening to close the other strait in our region, the Red Sea, and they've already closed it. Virtually no ships pass there. No ships are passing through the Straits of Hormuz. We went into a coalition with Saudi Arabia and a number of other countries to stop that threat from Iran because they were funding the Houthis, that the international community didn't see through. What we think needs to happen today is we need to find a definitive, comprehensive solution to Iran becoming a peaceful, responsible neighbor in our region. That requires some grit. It may require some burden sharing with other partners in the region and internationally, but we're all committed to that outcome.
If you were to look at your crystal ball and say, how long does this last, what do you think it looks like?
Depends what the outcomes are. I think we start with securing the Straits of Hormuz. We should be able to do that in the near future. I think building out on that, we need a diplomatic off-ramp of negotiations with whoever is in charge in Iran about its ballistic missile weapons program and its nuclear enrichment program. I mean, to your point about why diplomacy hasn't worked, they told us they didn't have a nuclear enrichment program. Today we know they have enough enriched uranium to make up to 12 bombs. They told us they didn't have a ballistic missiles weapons program that could threaten anyone. They can now reach most capitals in Europe, including also the Gulf, which they've demonstrated they're willing to do. 89% of their targets have been civilian infrastructure in my country. This has to stop.
Your Excellency, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Brett, for having me.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.